My virtual obsession, my romantic thriller, is now available on Amazon and other online retailers. This book explores the intersection of loneliness, love, and how chasing perfection through technology can lead to fantasy and reality colliding. My virtual obsession out now.
Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey, beautiful souls, it's Crestani with another episode of Willow Healing Matters, and today I am joined by the delightful Aleksandra Ceho. She is a professional astrologer, educator, and speaker who integrates esoteric principles with practical strategy to support personal and professional growth. Her work focuses on using astrology as a framework for self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and leadership development. Through her readings, workshops, and keynote presentations, Aleksandra helps individuals and organizations align purpose with performance, build meaningful relationships, and navigate change with clarity and confidence. Known for her insightful and relatable communication style, she bridges the gap between spirituality and business, empowering clients to make conscious, value-driven decisions that foster authenticity, resilience, and long-term success. So a big welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I'm so excited. We've already been having a blast, so we're gonna have fun.
We just hit record. That was the difference.
Yeah, let's record the fun.
Exactly. So the first question I love to ask is, just intuitively, what pulled you into astrology? There's always a beautiful story.
Oh my gosh. Well, my journey into astrology started when I was about 5 or 6 years old. So my grandfather was an amateur astrologer. And whenever we would go to visit my grandparents, like they had all of those dark brown leather bound books, but the astrology books were these vibrant turquoise and blue and gold. And so I would go and steal these colored books off the shelf. And I started reading about Athena and Hermes and Zeus and Aphrodite and all of the Greek gods and goddesses. And there was this resonance that I felt even back then. And so every time I went to my grandparents, I would go and steal those brightly colored books off the shelf. I would lock myself in the guest bedroom where all the snacks were. It was filled with a wall-to-wall closet of snacks. My grandmother was amazing. And I would just read about the Greek gods and goddesses and how they were related to astrology. And so it's really been a lifelong affair. Astrology is my first love.
No, that's beautiful. And I love just the contrast, but right, that pulled you in the first place of, oh, look at these boring books versus, wow, these look magical. And I'm so excited to dive deeper.
Yeah, I was a bit of a magpie, I guess, but I mean, what child isn't?
I just had this image of you just like hiding away with your snacks around you and all your books going, precious.
Pretty much. It was either that or I was going outside and like hunting down frogs and that kind of thing.
Because you felt just at peace with that, right? That was just where you
Yeah.
felt most resonant with. And I feel to ask as well, there's this talk at the moment, and I find it really confusing. I just try not to buy into it. But there's talk like there's different types of astrology. And what does that actually mean, that there's different types of astrology?
Well, okay, so that's actually a really great question, Catherine. So astrology, there's different branches of it. So there's what the Western traditions derive from. For example, what's known as Western astrology basically derived from a series of steps as astrology moved from the times of Hermes Trismegistus and traveled up from the south of Africa into Egypt, where it blended with Sumerian techniques and then ended up in Greece. So that's one branch or one version which combined astrological knowledge that came from different parts of the world. And the vast majority of it actually came from Hermes Trismegistus himself. And so he's said to be the father of astrology, alchemy, and theurgy, which is ritual magic. But then, of course, there are other systems of astrology. So the Chinese were also watching the stars. right? And they had developed their own system. The Mayans and the Aztecs, they also had their eyes on the skies too, and they were keeping watch. And a lot of astrological knowledge really derived from watching the cycles of the stars and the planets and seeing the effects that they had here on Earth. And the number one thing that they looked at in the beginning was actually weather. And the Sumerians in particular used this method of basically looking at the weather to denote the nature of the planets. And so they knew that when Mars was in a particular place, that you were going to have hotter, drier weather. So the energy of Mars is hot and dry, like fire. Whereas, when the moon was overhead in certain ways, well, you were going to get cooler, moist, or wet energy, right? Because you were going to get rain. And so the moon's nature is watery.
Wow. I had no idea. I'm so fascinated by this. Now there's lots of things conflicting with that, but it's just really interesting that that's where it started from.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you were to consult astrologers hundreds and even thousands of years ago, they were often some of the most educated people you would have had in the kingdom. Because astrologers, they needed to know math because they had to do calculations. So math and geometry needed to be part of what they knew. They also had to be literate, right? They had to be able to read, right? Write and record things. They had to know about the weather and the cycles of the weather. They also had to know politics, right? And like social manners and graces, because very often astrologers were consulting with royalty, giving them guidance on next steps, giving them warnings about what's coming. Because, for example, and this is not something I practice, but there's a whole branch of what's called weather astrology. And so, they can predict things like earthquakes and larger, weather events. And astrologers did that back then because, we were subject to the environment and it could absolutely impact us. So you needed to be ahead of the game when it came to, is there going to be a famine or drought? Are we going to have major weather events? Because we're going to need to make sure that we have adequate food storage. Because if you don't have food, what happens? You're going to have riots and violence and theft and all these things that you don't want in your kingdom. So astrologers used to be some of the foremost educated intellectuals of the kingdom at the time. And it wasn't just, the weather that they provided guidance on. Their job was also to help educate, the royalty or the leaders or the military, like the heads of military, to help them understand their blind spots, to understand their own natures, because we all have triggers.
Yes.
And
yes, we do.
Right? And it's one thing if you get triggered and it's just you, but if you get triggered and you do something not well thought out that affects many people, kind of not good.
Yes, consequences. Bit of a domino effect there.
Yeah. So you need someone to help keep your ego in check so that you're not acting out of turn and destroying your kingdom.
Yeah. But I feel that it still translates into us now, even if we're not kings or queens, still.
Absolutely.
A lot of people will go, I'm a Cancer, so this is how I show up. I'm a Cancer. But, it's like, I'm a Cancer and this is how I show up. I'm like, well, that's one aspect of you. What about the rest of them? And then how does it play out in your life? Because you're just putting yourself in a box then, right? Rather than being
Exactly. And being a Cancer is not an excuse for your triggers.
No.
Or being a Gemini is not an excuse for your triggers, or whatever your sign is.
Exactly. But it is interesting. It's just about being more aware. So at the moment, my Instagram feed is filled with, hey, are you a Cancer having a hard time at the moment? This is what's going on. I'm like, thank you. I understand. I'm not going to use that as an excuse, but it just helps me understand why I am feeling so lost and confused and anything else that was been bubbling up the last 2 days, because people don't realize how much the energies of planets and the moon and everything around us still have a vibration and it impacts on us. And because of our
Totally.
unique soul frequency, which is the whole point of astrology, right? That we have a unique, it impacts us all uniquely.
Totally. And the thing is, from person to person, it's not always going to be the same either. Because you could think of astrology almost as being like a platform, and then you build on top of it, right? And yes, you have certain predispositions, and I'm going to quote Shakespeare here. The stars incline, they do not determine. So when people treat astrology like the personality boxes, they are using it in a deterministic way. But astrology was never that, because free will is still part of the picture. So astrology was actually meant to be a developmental system. If you were to summarize the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, the father of astrology and alchemy and theurgy, it would basically be that you are divine. And astrology is one of the methodologies that we use to regain our divinity.
And remembrance, really.
Yeah. The oldest surviving, mostly complete text on astrology is called the Astronomica, and it was written by Marcus Manilius during the times of Julius Caesar, a little bit then and a little bit afterwards. It probably took him a long time. I think it was something like 20 years, because he wrote the entire thing in poem. So it's astrological teachings, but done in poem. So now it's in Latin. So when it gets translated to English, you kind of lose the poem, but there's still a beauty to it. And in the Astronomica, I mean, if you were to say this today, you'd kind of be a bit of a heretic, and especially a couple hundred years ago. But it says in the Astronomica that you are God.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Right.
you are divine.
Yeah.
And that's what astrology is meant. It's meant to be the bridge that gets you back to that.
Yeah. And remembering that you are created from God to be an experience for God. It's like, that tricky part. And it was an audiobook. I don't know. Sometimes Spirit just sends me audiobooks onto my Spotify audiobook things, right? And I have no idea where they come from. And this was one of those books. Anyway, and it was about the Essene children. I don't know if you know about the Essenes and the children. So the Essenes was a very unique culture that was alive during the time of Jesus, to the point where they said he was, or Joshua,
Yes.
or however you want to resonate with his name. He was kind of there. That was his community, and they understood and helped him and supported him. Anyway, but when these children were born, Alex, they would do their astrology for them. And what they would do with the astrology was use it to understand the child's gifts and their talents so they could nurture them to be the best they could be, and to allow
Yeah.
them to be fully walking in purpose and not have to go through all the the trials and the tribulations that we often have to go through.
That's beautiful. They treated every child as though they're divine, not as though they are, that they are divine. And, to this day, I it's not the primary part of my practice, but I still have parents who reach out to me because they want readings for their children. And so a lot of my clients actually will ask me to do readings for newborn children as gifts.
Which is
And
amazing. It's amazing. Yeah.
I love doing it. I love doing it because you get to understand this little soul who has just come onto the earth. Now, I usually like to wait until the child is about a year old. And the reason why is because my personal feeling is that you need to experience the child
Without any.
before anyone comes in and tells you anything. You need to have that genuine connection first, so that you're not approaching your child with what could become dogma.
Yeah. And
So I usually wait until they're a year old.
Yeah, I was going to say that then you're putting them in a box and treating them a certain way rather than allowing them to be and to grow into whoever they need to be, right?
Yeah. And when you start telling a parent about, helping them to understand what this child's needs are, how they emote, how they communicate, the channels that they learn by, activities to help them flourish, and things that they're going to become interested in. And I always give lots of options, because again, you don't want to put somebody in a box. It's not like I just look at a chart and go, okay, your child's supposed to be a pianist.
I wish our chart was that clear.
But where's the free will in that?
No, it's not. Meanwhile, the adults are like, can you do that? Can you tell us exactly what we're meant to be doing? Because I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's really, I have this story about this. So my friend was doing human design reports because she had this software. She's like, hey, do you want me to do one for you and your son and your husband? I was like, yeah. So mine came through perfectly. My husband's came through. My son's would not come through. Like, it kept changing the file. It kept changing everything. And she's like, I don't think we're meant to know. And I was like, I said, I agree with you. I'm not going. All I'm going to do is look at the front page so I understand, how he reacts and that sort of thing. I said, and then I'm just not going to read it. And once I said that, the file actually managed to get to me, but I'm not meant to read it yet. So I have this file, but I haven't opened it because I don't feel it's time yet. Exactly like you said, we don't want to put our children in a box, and we don't want them to, fall into this dogma. In saying that, sometimes I'm like, God, you've come here to really challenge me, haven't you? But at the same time, I know that. And, and I've always known that he's this sensitive little reflective soul, so it's just trusting that too. And I feel that always comes with anything, whether it's human design or astrology or whatever. It's like you take the information and you see how it applies to your life rather than let it govern your life.
100%. And I love that you leave the space for him to be him. Like, I think about it this way. If we were supposed to know, like, to a T what we were here to do, and to have it like summarized in a mission statement, because purpose is manifold. There's no singular thing that is your purpose, because your family is your purpose, your children are your purpose, your parents are your purpose, your partner is part of your purpose. So there's many things that comprise purpose. And a lot of times people are kind of like looking to the career aspect to be the purpose, and that it's just like one thing and it's this like big overarching mission, and you either fulfill it or you don't. And I think that creates a lot of pressure on yourself. It creates a lot of pressure on you to get it right. But we come here with amnesia. We've forgotten who we are. We are amnesiacs trying to reclaim our identity.
Yep.
And there's a lot of room for experimentation in the process. I truly feel that if we were supposed to know what our mission was to a T, we would have been born knowing it. We wouldn't be amnesiacs. But then there'd be no free will in the equation either.
Someone told me if you knew how to get to A to Z, why would you bother with everything in the middle?
Right?
Right?
Exactly. It would feel like orders. It wouldn't feel like growth and joy.
And then you just get stuck in the same karmic loops because you don't actually come in to shift anything. You're not actually experiencing life. And, how do you experience?
You're just fulfilling orders.
Yeah. And how do you feel a high if you've never had a low? How do you experience that joy and that soul alignment and those tears of gratitude if you've never been in the scarcity and the pits and been like, oh my gosh, what do you want from me? How do you get those extremes? You can tell I've done that a few times.
That's okay. I think we all have.
And then it's the anger. Why? And then it's like, oh, that's why.
What good could possibly come from this? Whoops.
The gift of hindsight. But but when you're in the thick of it, I understand how everyone's frustration, because I'm in the thick of it. And I like my message at the moment, my lesson, my life lesson, trust and surrender. Okay, guys. Okay.
Well, it's kind of funny because you talk about hindsight, and it made me think of Prometheus and Epimetheus. So, Catherine, I don't know if you've ever heard the story. So this is one of the Greek stories of human creation, actually. So after Zeus defeated his father Cronus, the earth was being terraformed and the vegetation was being created. And three gods were put in charge of all the beings that were going to occupy this new planet. So Prometheus, his brother Epimetheus, and then the goddess Athena. And so they started creating all of the animals that were going to populate the earth. So Prometheus would fashion them out of clay. Athena would breathe the spirit of life into them. And then Epimetheus's job was that he needed to give them a gift, right? So for example, birds had the power of flight. Fish could live in the water. So this was the cycle. They'd be fashioned out of clay by Prometheus. They would be given the spirit of life by Athena, and then they would be given a gift by Epimetheus. So all of the creatures were created, and then it was time for the final creature. And Prometheus fashioned man out of clay to stand on two legs as only the gods had done. And Athena breathed the spirit of life into us, and Epimetheus reaches deep into his pockets and comes up with nothing. Epimetheus means afterthought. So when you said hindsight, I was like, afterthought. No, wait, no, a little bit different. But luckily, Prometheus means forethought. So he anticipated, because the mortal sin of Epimetheus as the uncle of humanity is stupidity, actually. So Prometheus anticipated his brother's stupidity. And he went and he took the sacred fire from the kiln of Hephaestus and Athena, and he gave it to humanity. But fire was something that only the gods had touched before. And so that's how Prometheus ended up bound to a rock, by Zeus, with a crow eating his liver every day and just repeating the cycle, because he had broken the law and he had given humans fire when they perhaps may not have been ready for it. But Epimetheus was also the husband of Pandora. And we all know what happened when she opened that box.
And it's funny, because we're being, Pandora's box, when she opened it and everything like that. But at the same time, we're at this point in our evolution as humans where we have to open the box and we have to let all the demons out and face them and trust that that's part of us, and we have to embrace them and accept them so that they can be let go. And I almost wonder, I know this has just intuitively popped to my head, if Pandora's box was only so bad because of the anticipation of what it would end up like, and it created it bigger than what it needed to be. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But what I do know is that as human beings, we have the ability to face almost anything.
Yes, we do.
I don't believe that everything that happens is supposed to happen. It's not always part of a plan, right? And other people might believe the opposite. But what I do know is that whatever does happen, we do have the capacity to turn it around and turn it to advantage in some way.
Yeah. And there's that power in forgiving the unforgivable, and taking your power back from those situations and learning that there's more than just me. I'm actually capable of many more things. And I had this client and she kept saying, it's all too much. So the universe just kept giving her more because they needed to show that it was all too much. And I kept saying to her, you keep saying it's all too much. You're attracting this. You're attracting this. And the things that happened to her in this space of 3 months, it was all too much. It was all too much. I was like, you're still standing. You're still there. And it was only when she was in hospital, unfortunately. She was okay. But that she went, yes, she messaged me and she said, I understand what you're telling me now. She goes, I can't keep saying that. And once she changed that and flipped her perspective, all of the crap stopped happening. And I was like, well, makes sense, right? Because you kept attracting it. You kept attracting it. So how do we step out of that? And I feel that circling back to astrology and what you do, Alex, is that that's where there's that power in that knowledge too. Like you said at the start, knowing what triggers you have so you don't make decisions as a trigger and ruin the kingdom. It's the same for how you react with and interact with those around you too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Catherine, you're a mom. You're queen of the house.
That's it. That's
right? It. The decisions the queen makes affect the kingdom.
Yep. They certainly do.
We have agency and power now and the need to make decisions that we wouldn't have had 100 years ago, a couple hundred years ago, certainly not 1,000 years ago. Life was very much plotted out for you based on who you were born to.
Yeah. And we definitely have more freedom now, and we can always choose to change our circumstances. It might be hard, or it might be really difficult to figure out how to do that. But if there's a will, there's a way.
Totally. And capacity to create. I mean, at what point in time have you ever had the chance to create a business like you can today?
Exactly.
To take charge of your own destiny, to take charge of your own abundance, and to be able to give meaningfully to the world. There's never been an opportunity like there has been today. It's absolutely amazing.
100%. 100%. And as we start to finish our time together, I'm conscious that we could keep talking about all things.
We're having fun.
We are having fun. I asked the guests, Alex, that come on the show, if you could heal or change something in the world, what would it be?
I'm going to say shame. It is the biggest hindrance to us accepting our light and divinity. The seed of shame is that there's something wrong with you. And that because there's something wrong with you, negative things that happen to you are justified. So if I could heal one thing in the world, I would heal shame.
It's beautiful. Got told this story the other week, and it said, do you wake up in the morning and get judged whether or not you get to breathe air, or do you just get to breathe air? Yeah, just be. Just be. And if people want to come and find you, Alex, and work with you, what is the best way that they can connect?
Well, I would be honored to do so. They can find me on my website, astrologerroyale.com. And I also have a free ebook while you're there. So for astrology lovers, if you want to find out more about yourself and your professional strengths and talents and how to mitigate stress, you can find Star Powered Resilience there, and you can download a free copy.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure to put those details in the show notes as well. I'm curious. I'm going to go have a look too. So, yes.
Pro tip, if you know your Mercury and Mars signs, you can get more nuanced information.
I need to look them up. I've got many charts around me, but yeah, I'll look them up.
Perfect.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Alex, and for giving us a very unique insight into the history of astrology, because no one's actually covered that on the show. I had no idea it was used for weather. So this is so fascinating.
Yeah.
But also how it can just apply in different ways in your life as well.
Oh, well, it was my honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you looking for an afternoon boost to support you until the children go to bed, or to get through that evening meeting? Why not reach for a cup of ceremonial cacao? It will boost your energy, reduce your inflammation, and also allow you to go to sleep at a decent hour. For more information on how to grab your ceremonial cacao, check out the link in the show notes for 10% off. Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.